Hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. You're watching Bryan Lomax's Movie Talk.
Just 1 year after the release of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and with the great success that that film brought, a sequel was quickly put into production and released in cinemas. This one is directed by Jack Sholder and has no involvement from original creator Wes Craven. The story focuses on a high school student by the name of Jesse Walsh, played by Mark Patton. Now this kid kind of gets possessed by Freddy Krueger. Freddy basically needs this kid to bring him into the physical world from the dream world. So he needs to possess him, and he needs to convince this kid to kind of let him do that. So it has to be done willingly in a way. But as always, Freddy does it through a campaign of fear that he wages in this guy's dreams. Now, this film has been much maligned over the years by fans of the franchise, and in many instances it's not hard to see why. But that's not to say that it doesn't have anything to offer. Some of the best horror films often have a deeper subtext, an underlying theme that can be related to the real world and things that are happening in the real world. And this film feels very much like a commentary on homosexuality. Now, to what degree the filmmakers wanted that to be the case is open for debate. Jack Sholder, in the special features on the box set for this, never out and out says that that was his intention, but he doesn't seem to avoid the distinction either. He seems quite laid back with it, so it makes one believe that maybe that was intended. We get this kid, Jesse, who clearly isn't a normal teenager. This is called out by his sister very early on in the film, after he wakes up from this nightmare screaming like a girl. Like literally, we don't see him when he screams, we hear him off camera, and it sounds like a girl. I'm not saying all gay people, all gay men have girly screams, but there's the connotation there, certainly back in the 80s when this was made, that gay people would be effeminate, and they lay that out in the stall right away. This guy has the girliest sounding scream you've ever heard, and then right after, his little sister says, you know, why can't he be like all the normal kids? So right off the bat, they lay out that this guy isn't normal. He isn't like other kids. Now, obviously, as far as the film goes, that's because he's having nightmares, he's a little bit weird. But if you want to read the subtext into it, we can say that he's gay, or at least he's wrestling with these feelings. That's backed up throughout the rest of the film by other things that happen. Most notably, he turns down the sexual advances or the chance to have sex with his girlfriend, Lisa, and instead runs off to one of his friend's bedrooms, a male friend's bedroom, to ask him to help. And then the line of dialogue when he goes in there, he talks about he's inside me, and it's like it's so on the nose that it's actually quite comical. It's funny beyond belief. Now, as I say, director John Sholder denies any knowledge that this is what it was meant to be, but he says now, looking back, watching it in retrospect, it's all over it. You know, as Freddy is trying to come out of him and take over his body, so to speak, he's trying to deny it, he's trying to push it down. And one of the things about the film is that his girlfriend Lisa, in a way, is asking him to repress that, because she's telling him to fight Freddy, to push him back, push him back to where he came from. So in a way, that the film kind of plays like a mixed message, really. Now, the film was hailed back in the day when it came out by many in the gay community as, you know, one of the best gay horror films that there is. But when you actually think about the message at the end, in which his girlfriend is telling him essentially to repress what he's feeling, repress what he thinks he is, or what he thinks he's becoming, then yeah, it's hard to understand why they would be so accepting of a movie like this, especially when the actual gay characters in the film are also presented in a rather stereotypical light. We get this teacher character, this gym teacher character, and he's he's a gay guy, but he's basically into all the S&M stuff, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a bit weird. It's a bit misrepresentative of the gay community, shall we say. Now, I like the fact that the film does actually try to deal with an issue. It does try to take something of relevance within the real world and make it a subtext within the film. Whether the film does it well is open for discussion. Personally, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. At times it does, at other times, the gym teacher being a prime example, it really doesn't, and it falls flat. Another problem with this film is that a lot of stuff happens in it for no apparent reason, other than the fact that, I guess, the director and the creative forces behind it felt that it looked cool or scary or whatever. And there's a scene with some budgies. They have these birds, their house seems to be getting really hot, and then these birds start attacking them and explode, and then we move on to the next scene, and that's just a non-event, really. It's like it's there. It's just there, but it doesn't do anything. It's never called back on later in the film. Nothing that happens in that scene becomes relevant in any way to character motivation, to character development, to the advancement of the plot. It's just there, and that can be said about so many scenes in this film. When Freddy starts to come into the real world, his powers start to come with him, and it's kind of hard to accept because there's no kind of clear rules that are set with regards to how Freddy is able to act within the real world. No rules that kind of relate back to the first film at any rate. It's just literally like they do whatever they want to do if they think it looks cool. The soundtrack for this film is so bizarre as well. There are some nice musical cues in it, but then at other times there are just some really bizarre ones. Like we keep hearing these whale noises. Literally about 2/3 of the way into the film, I realised there was whale noises going on. I was like, have they been there the whole time? But then once I heard them, I couldn't unhear them, and I just kept hearing them every time they came in. And it was really bizarre. It was just a bizarre musical choice. The final thing that I will say I just can't stand about this film, and a lot of films in the horror genre, to be honest, is the final scene in which we have that kind of scare. Everything gets resolved, we have the big confrontation, the heroes win, and then we have a final scene where it turns out actually they've not won at all, nothing's changed, Freddy's still haunting them. And I hate these scenes. It was one of my complaints with the first film. I kind of at least understand a little bit where they were going with the first film on that, even though I just didn't like it. But I like it even less so here, because they've had a confrontation with Freddy, they've defeated him, and actually they've not. And it just kind of... Why do that? If Freddy isn't truly defeated, then why didn't he get them there and then when he had the chance? It makes no sense to me, and it always feels tacked on. It always feels forced. It's like, oh, come back for the sequel, and it's like, if you're never going to address that in the sequel anyway, so why bother having that as a supposed setup for a sequel? It just annoys me. I don't like those stingers at the end of films when they just feel tacked on and completely irrelevant. Now, the film isn't all bad, don't get me wrong. There is a few enjoyable moments in here. Like I say, I do like the main character. I like the subtext there, even though, as I say, at times it's very heavy-handed. I like the relationship between him and Grady. Again, there's a bit of a kind of homoerotic thing going on there, but their relationship feels natural. The Grady seems like a bit of a douche when we first meet him, but you warm up to him in a good way, in a natural way. He feels like an actual college or high school student, someone who is going to be a bit douchey at times, but underneath is actually a decent guy, is someone who you can be friends with once you truly start to get to know them. And the relationship, like I say, between these two guys feels natural. Now, it's worth noting that these two guys in real life, the actors, did go on to be friends for quite some time after the film. And I think that shows, that chemistry, that natural chemistry in real life comes through in the performances. And that's one thing I will say about this film actually in general, is that the performances on the whole are better. The girl who plays Lisa, I actually prefer her performance-wise, not necessarily character-wise, not necessarily the way she's written, but actress, the performance she gives, I think personally is better than Heather Langenkamp in the first film. She also kind of has a very young Meryl Streep kind of look to her. That's something that struck me when this film first began. I was like, man, she looks like a young Meryl Streep. You know, not quite the talent that Meryl Streep has, but again, still a very good performance from her, I think. There's also a few genuinely good kind of creepy scares, a few really nice gory moments, some good special effects going on it. There's one moment with these two dogs that have these kind of human faces, and it's just weird. I didn't expect to see it at all, and it kind of caught me off guard when it came. It was a nice kind of visual, well, like not a nice kind of visual, but in a good way. There are certain scenes that they don't make sense, because you can't tell if they're happening in reality or whether it's in the dream world. And if it's in reality, then the setup for it doesn't make sense. If it's in the dream world, then the payoff doesn't quite make sense. So like, you've got the teacher, the gym teacher, and this bizarre scene plays out in which he takes Jesse to the school and makes him run round the courtyard, and you're kind of like, what are you doing there? How did you get there? Why would you go there? Okay, maybe this is a dream, but then the teacher does get killed in that moment, so that moment must also be happening. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's bizarre. You need to specify. If you're making a film like this, in which we have this killer who kills within the dream world, specify. You need to be more specific with what's going on. Maybe not as it's happening, but certainly once the events have unfolded, we need to know as an audience what has just happened. And there are times during this film where I just feel like we don't know that. So this is a big step down from the first film. Now, if you see my review for the first film, that was a film itself that to me was a little bit disappointing after the memories I had of it from watching it when I was much younger. But yeah, this is definitely a big step down from there. It's got a few redeeming things about it, like I say, the performances, the subtext, a bit heavy-handed though at times. But I would give it a 2.5 out of 5. It does have entertaining moments. I am engaged throughout it, but it is just a little bit messy. So if you've seen A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, please comment below and let me know what you thought about it. And do you feel like it's an underrated film, or do you kind of go along with the majority of opinion, which is that it generally sucks? Let me know, and until next time, thanks for watching.